Low-key photography can be a really impactful way to take photos, and it doesn't require a lot of equipment. It doesn't require a large amount of space, and you can pretty much do it yourself. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I do it with equipment, lighting, and settings for your camera, and all that good stuff. Photog family and good people of Earth, I am Charles of CJ Images, and yes, the C stands for my first name. Why was that even important to say? I don't know. They probably got that already. Welcome to my channel. I know that's really cliche to say, but this is kind of like my first go at it, and I kind of want to give you a warm welcome. I'm going to be making videos for the on-the-budget photographer. Most of the time when you look up videos on how to do certain things on YouTube or wherever you find them from, the photographer has really expensive equipment, cameras that cost upwards of $5,000 and light setups that cost upwards of $10,000. I myself am working with a budget camera per se. Today I'm going to be showing you how I do low-key photography. Now, what is low-key photography? The term low-key just means really deep shadow, so the majority of your photo will be kind of dark, but your subject or point of emphasis is going to be lit very well. It all depends on how you do it and probably the things you do it with, but nonetheless, it could create some very impactful photos. As for equipment, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need a dark background, whether it's a collapsible background like that one behind me, or just a really dark colored blanket that you can hang up behind you. That's essentially going to be your set for the photos. Now, full disclosure, I'm going to be using a lot of equipment from a company called Neewer. I am not sponsored by this company. I just figured I'd give you guys the actual company from which my equipment comes from. They make a wide variety of photographer equipment that is also very, very affordable. Also heavy duty, so the equipment can hold up pretty well. Now, as far as equipment goes, I'm going to be using a collapsible backdrop. It's black on one side and white on the other side. It's the same exact backdrop that's behind me right now. I'm working on a set, but I'm using my collapsible backdrop for a background. Now, if you have a collapsible backdrop, you're going to need a backdrop stand. These are backdrop stands. They come with a long extension arm across the top and some clips so that you can clamp your backdrop to the stand and it will hold up by itself. Of course, I'm going to be using a tripod. Now, disclaimer, I have no idea what company made this tripod I'm using now. It's the same tripod that's holding up my current camera. And I've had the thing for years, and for its purposes, it's always done what it's supposed to do. Let's talk lighting setups. Now, I'm going to be using a Speedlight. This is a Godox V862C. If I'm not mistaken, the retail value on this thing is about 50, 60 bucks or something like that. But the reason why I'm using Speedlights is because they're really inexpensive in comparison to strobes. Yes, studio strobes put out a lot more light, but these things work very well for indoor portraits. You don't need a ton of power and they're really inexpensive, so you can get a couple of them if you're a beginning photographer. Now, in order for my camera to talk to my lights, I'm going to have to use something called a trigger and receiver. This is a YN622C. Essentially what these do is let the camera talk to the light. When you press the shutter button on your camera, these will tell your light source to fire. Now, there are much more complicated ways to do this very thing that I'm talking about. But as a photographer on a budget, I figured I'd give you some of the best but inexpensive equipment to achieve the same look. Also, you're going to need what's called a light modifier. Now, if I were just to take this flash and point it in my direction to let it fire, the head of this flash is very small, so the light source would be very hard on me. And what I mean by hard is it's going to create really hard lines of shadow on my face, and probably don't want that. So what I have to do is modify the light, essentially making this light source much bigger than it is. For this particular shot, I'm going to be using a softbox. Well, this is in a box, but the softbox is in here. Let me, are you ready for this? Check this out, watch this, watch this. Ooh. Well, that was anticlimactic. This is a Godox Softbox. It's 60 centimeters across and it's a perfect square. This is just what it looks like on the inside. It's like silver inside with like a piece of diffusion material. So when the light bounces out of this thing, that light source is gonna be super huge and way bigger than my face. Even though I have a big head, it's still gonna be bigger. As you can see, it's bigger than my head. You see that? I'm sorry. And we'll also have a 60 centimeter Octabox that's from the company Neewer that I mentioned. Same exact materials on the inside as the softbox I just showed you. The only reason I'm not showing you now is because that's what's lighting me right now. Now some people might be asking, well, what are you gonna do with the light modifier? Where are you gonna put it up? I'm going to be using something called an S-type bracket. This S-type bracket allows me to put the flash inside of it in a specific way, and it fits the majority of my modifiers so that I can attach any one at any given time. These things are also another piece of equipment that probably runs you about 20, 30 bucks. You're gonna also need something called a light stand. It's essentially one of these. Again, you just have a different head on the top of it so that you can mount your S-type brackets. Once you have this set up and you have your S-type on top, your flash inside, your light modifier on, and all that good stuff. I know it sounds complicated, but hear me out. Once you have all that good stuff on there, you're in a good position to start lighting the scene. As a general rule of thumb, the closer your light source is to the model, the softer the shadows will be. And if you have a really big light modifier like the one that's over my head right now, it's going to naturally be soft because it's bigger than the subject, but the closer you get it, the softer it's going to be. For certain looks, I kind of want that hard light setup, but for these personal shots of myself, I think I'm going to go softer light. So I'm going to have the light right above my head, kind of like this, but directly over me. And I'm going to have it relatively close to the top of my head so that it rains down light from top to bottom and it's very soft. Also, I'm going to position the light so that it's directly on me and pointing straight down. This way I have no spill of light on my background because I don't want the background to be lit up. I want it to stay dark. And I'm not going to be standing close to the background myself because, again, I don't want light spill to be on my background. Now I'm going to set my speedlight at full power because I'm going to control the settings or exposure in camera. If I set it up this way, I know that this light will always fire at full power no matter what I do. I just have to adjust the settings in camera for the look I'm trying to achieve. Now let's talk camera choices. Was that loud? I think it was loud. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be shooting with a Canon EOS SL2. This is the same exact camera that I'm currently making video on right now. 24 megapixels, the same amount of autofocus points, which is only 9. The camera's nothing to like write home about, but for me, it is absolutely amazing. Now, as far as lens choices go, I'm gonna go with the Nifty 50, the Fantastic Plastic, or the 50mm 1.8 lens. Yes, those are real nicknames that the lens have. This is not something I came up with. Those are the nicknames of this lens, and for good reason. This lens is incredibly sharp, and it's at a focal point that is perfect for portrait photos. That sentence was really hard to get out because it has so many P's in it. Perfect for portrait photos. It's really crisp. It doesn't have too much trouble finding focus. And on top of that, for the budget photographer, the lens is in between 100 and 150 bucks. Since I got this lens, like, it's been my workhorse since forever. Like, I love this lens. I can't tell you enough about this lens. Like, it is absolutely amazing. Now, we got our lights, we got our stands, we got our camera, we got our lens, we have our backdrop, we have all these things in place. Now, how do we take the photo? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to set your exposure before you take any photo. Your exposure is made up of 3 different variables: ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. I'm going to make a video going into great detail about those 3 things and what exposure is. Before this video, I'm going to keep it relatively quick and tell you exactly what each of them do. Your ISO on your camera controls your camera's sensitivity to light. The lower the ISO number, whether it's 50 or 100, the less noise you'll have in your photos. The higher your ISO number is, the more noise you're going to introduce into your photo. Now, I call it noise, but other people might call it grain. Your shutter speed is kind of in charge of your camera capturing motion. This is the number that's split up into a fraction, whether it's 1/60th of a second or 1/400th of a second, and all these other different numbers. Because it works in fractions, the lower the fraction number, whether it's 1/60th of a second or 1/2 of a second, the longer it's going to take for your camera to capture the motion. That's when you see photos that have this really blurry effect to them. Their camera is capturing a lot of motion by having a low shutter speed number. High shutter speed numbers is when you want to freeze something in action. If you're shooting at something like 1/4000th of a second, you probably won't ever have any motion being shown in your photos at all. And your aperture is the beginning photographer's baby. This is the setting that controls how much of your background is in focus or out of focus. Essentially what's known as depth of field. If you've ever seen those photos that have a really dreamy looking background where everything is just blown out of focus, those photos are shot at f-stops that are normally really low. You get something like a 1.8 or a 1.4 or 1.2, this will blow the entire background out. However, if you're shooting something like landscapes or architecture and you want everything in focus from front to back, you're typically going to use a higher f-stop number. This is something like f18 or f22 and the list goes on. Now I know for my photo, I want everything to be in focus, but I also want to keep the rest of the photo relatively dark. So I'm going to set my exposure so that if I don't have a light present, when I take a photo, it's going to produce a black screen. That's because the only light that I want in my photo is the light that I produce. As for my settings, I'm going to probably shoot at something like ISO 100, f5.6 with a shutter speed of maybe 1/200 of a second. I'm not sure yet. And I'm also going to keep in mind that I'm going to crop these photos in later so that I'm able to post on social media. So when I take them, I'm going to back up a little bit to give myself some room for cropping. Now with my camera set in place, the background set up, the light above my head, my exposures are dialed in and everything is ready to go. Once I click my button, these are the results I'm going to get. And there you have it. That's the way I personally do the low-key photography thing. I really love this look for some reason. It allows me to be able to shoot photos of myself or another subject, but I don't really need a lot of equipment. And I can also do it in a really small space, so it doesn't matter where I am. All I have to do is set up my stuff and I'm ready to go. And again, the majority of the equipment is super inexpensive, so anybody can purchase these things. If there's something else that you'd like to learn how to do or anything else you'd like me to talk about, leave a comment in the comment section of this video. That's all I got for you today, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this video, so stay home, stay safe, and grab your camera. Keep on clicking. Now I'm using a collapsible backdrop. A backdrop. We push on, we move forward. Whatever. I'm reading a script. Now, as a general rule, did I eat gummy bears before I started this video or something? Because I just can't talk today. I feel like one of them church dudes would be the deacon. And the father said, no, I'm stupid. I don't know why I made that noise. I sound like one of them Star Wars characters. You know what I'm talking about. Hit that from Crash Bandicoot. That's my game. I love it. Anybody ever play? If you ever played Crash Bandicoot, put in the comments and let me know. I beat the whole game, but I was a kid when I did it, so like it was years ago. Very, very,